production line for Supernatural Strength merchandise is the iconic Deep, Deep, Deep Inside shirt. Ladies and gents, get out there and get your merch. Links in the description, copy and paste it into your browser. Feel the love, motherfuckers. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show. Neil Pickup, the fat lad, in the mother fluffing house, just for another evening of Deep Inside the minds of the world's greatest arm wrestlers. The technical gremlins have been kicking the living daylights out of me this evening, guys. But I'm glad to say I've got one of the rising stars of American arm wrestling on the phone now. Kevin Robertson has joined us, ladies and gents. Kevin, welcome to the show. Now then, mate.
How you doing, Neil?
It's exciting times. I've started to branch out a little bit with the Deep Inside series, mate, and I've got some guys coming on who are what I would say slightly below the radar of the wider public in terms of their level. And I'm going to try and cover some of these guys from all around the world, not just the United States of America. But I had Jason Merlo on the show the other night. We actually spoke about you. That'll be coming out shortly. Yourself, obviously, in this show, going to get Wayne Withers on here as another guy that's right there. Probably Passmore would be another one from North America. That's the kind of ilk, and from the UK and from around this area, a guy that a lot of people may have seen online but haven't seen a lot about, and that will be Adrian O'Dwyer. The idea of this, mate, is just to really expose you guys to the public, let people know you're out there, and dig into your background past a little bit as we've done with the other guys that have come on the show. But firstly, thanks for taking the time out. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely, Neil. Pleasure to be on. Like I told you before the call, you know, I dig into all the content you upload. You're doing great things for the sport, especially with this time with COVID, and the pandemic and whatnot. So, it's great for arm wrestling. It's an honor to be on the show. I'm looking forward to it.
Cheers, brother. Thank you very much. How are you guys being affected over there? Are you in what part of the US are you in for people who don't know, mate?
I'm in Ohio, the northeast portion of Ohio. It was really bad, March through roughly October, November. It's starting to cool down a little bit. So people, the mask mandate and everything's still out here, but you know, restaurants, bars, everything's starting to open back up, full time. So, you know, it's starting to ease up, and I was surprised to hear you say in the UK, they're kind of cracking down on you guys up there.
Yeah, we're still, dateline check right now. We are still in national lockdown.
Wow.
So, the schools have literally opened like a couple of days ago. So,
okay.
Yeah, it's touch wood. You would hope that things are going to ease soon. There's sort of a published timeline. But right now, I can't even go and see my best friend or couldn't go to my next door neighbour's house. It's absolutely locked down at the moment.
We were there. We were there too. I feel your pain.
Bad times, brother. Bad times. But let's talk about you, mate, and let's get into sort of dig into your background. One of the things that we were speaking about with you last night, Kevin, the first time I saw you in person, I was impressed with you physically. For the weight class that you pull, you've got a big frame. You're a big lad. Just for people out there who aren't as familiar with you, Kevin, just tell us how tall you are, your weight, and just give us a bit of the stats breakdown.
I'm 6'4". Right now I'm about 200, 205, which is actually the heaviest I've weighed in quite some time. Usually I was around that 190 to 195 mark. I'm one of them guys with no legs. You know, you hear a lot of the guys talk about no legs, but I really wasn't cut from the cloth in terms of a natural strength background. You know, my father, he wasn't a power lifter or a bodybuilder of any sort. You know, I was a smaller kid growing up.
Really?
You know, I didn't hit my growth spurt till late in high school, actually. I was shorter. I wasn't the strongest kid, but I was fortunate enough to get an athletic gene on my side, you know, and that kind of helped me combat, you know, being short, not being the strongest kid. And then, you know, as I progressed through junior high, high school, I hit that growth spurt, started to find the weight room. So I was able to put on a little bit of weight and fill out my frame a little bit.
Yeah, and obviously you spoke about the fact that you're very well proportioned. Your weight's distributed brilliantly for arm wrestling. That is exactly what I meant.
Right.
From when I saw you, I thought, holy, you were cut from the cloth of arm wrestling. You got that RVJ thing going on. Balsa wood legs, massive upper body, tall, lean, athletic frame. When you say you had a sort of an athletic gene, what was your first sporting pursuits as a kid, mate?
As a kid, I grew up around sports, I mean, if I wasn't playing backyard football, I was playing basketball, baseball. I grew up around it. My parents, kind of instilled that in me at a young age. I lived right outside of a park, but, the two sports, all through childhood up through, even high school, it was baseball and basketball. That's kind of was my bread and butter in terms of sports and what I was, acclimated to at a very, very young age. It's super, super competitive nature. And my dad instilled that in me. He was tough on me at times, but he instilled that in me at a very, very young age.
You say obviously your parents encouraged that. Were both your parents into sports themselves? Did they have any kind of sporting background or pedigree of their own?
My dad was a really, really good baseball player, and I kind of followed in his footsteps at a young age. But like I said, my dad was hard on me in the sense a lot of constructive criticism. But I remember times at the ball field when we were younger, dog days of summer in the heat. I was surrounded by a good group of guys, and we would be on a traveling team, and we'd be bouncing all over, having double and triple headers. And he was just one of them guys. If you didn't perform well that day, it's like, hey, go get a bucket of balls. We're going to slap them against the fence for the next half hour. So he kind of instilled that in me. Just that fatherly tough love.
Yep.
But I kind of grew up in that competitive nature. He kind of instilled all those beliefs in me that average isn't necessarily bad, but we're not going to settle for average. He was just that's kind of the household I grew up in.
Good for you, mate. I actually quite like that.
Oh yeah. Looking
school.
back on it, I love it. I was glad I was raised that way. I wouldn't have had it any other way.
Teaches you the grind.
Absolutely.
That's you got that natural grit and that gravel. You can dig in when it counts, and in a game like this, you certainly need it, right. Without a shadow of a doubt. But I'm keen to understand. You say obviously you had your growth spurt as you were in high school. What kind of age was that, mate?
I didn't hit my growth spurt actually till like my sophomore summer going into my junior year. So it was really, really late for me. I was short, and I was always on the skinnier, scrawnier side. I graduated high school at 6'2"-ish, 160 pounds soaking wet. So I was small. But I kind of found the weight room after I got out of high school. I had some chances to play baseball and basketball on the collegiate level, but I didn't take that opportunity because it was smaller end schools, Division III, some smaller Division II schools. So I kind of just decided to stay around home, concentrate on my academics and whatnot. And but like I said, I found the gym and I started to fill out my frame. So once I got into college, I didn't really have anything to kind of feed that competitive nature, that was instilled in me at such a young age. So I was kind of looking for something at that point that was like my drug. I needed it. That's something that I always thrived off of. So, I kind of looked to arm wrestling to kind of feed that competitive nature that I was always looking for, seeking.
Now, when you were, before you sort of got into strength sport, I'm interested to know why the gym, what led you that way. Was it A, that you were looking to fill out and to make yourself bigger because you'd been a smaller kid? Or were you always interested in strength, in some kind of pursuit of combat or strength sport? Was that always in you? Did you always have an active interest in it, mate?
I didn't have an active interest in necessarily like the combat sport or the fight sport, but I always had an interest in getting stronger because I was always one of them weaker guys. And I knew coming up through sports, if it wasn't for that little bit of athleticism I had, I was always scrapping and clawing. So I knew that, there was a handful of guys ahead of me that had that strength that I didn't have. So moving into the college, I was like, what? I'm kind of out of the sports realm of things. So, I'm going to hit the gym and, see what I can actually develop my body in. And, I was always good in arm wrestling, so didn't really have any idea that it was a thing or, that I was going to have it in my life in a career. So I was just lifting the lift, something to keep me occupied and keep me motivated to some level, but I really didn't have anything to motivate myself at the gym. So at a point in time, it was like, what the heck am I here for?
What's your first memory of arm wrestling, mate? either seen or actual participated in yourself?
You know, at a young age, I mean, as a lot of guys, you know, can relate, you know, early cafeteria days, you know, at school, you know, at the bars and such. And I was always good. You know, one of those guys that didn't take too many losses. You know, I had one buddy that would give me some fits, and he still jokes about it with me, to this day. But, you know, he knew my mindset around sports in general as a kid. Mm. He's like, you know what? He said, I'd love to see you, actually dive in, you know, delve into arm wrestling, learn and understand it. And he says, with your mindset and your motivation, he says, I'd like to see where you could get. So, you know, once I got into college and I kind of was looking something to feed that itch, you know, I was like, you know what, kind of took it on the chin. I said, you know, I'm going to try this out. So that's kind of when I started, you know, getting on the arm wrestling boards and, finding out where tournaments are and such. And that's kind of where, you know, the whole process started for me.
And at what age did you start to actively pursue the sport, mate, or seek it out?
I think the first year that my very first tournament that I ever went to was in 2013. You know, it was just a small USAA, amateur novice tournament. And actually, believe it or not, I remember, Dan Mosier probably didn't remember, but he was actually there. It was in Ohio. I believe he used to live in Ohio. It was at the Medina County Fair. You know, he was there. He was actually pulling light weights. He won his lightweight class. I won my middleweight class. And, then it was funny, you know, I didn't really take much of it. You know, I was still hitting it in the gym. I didn't know what I had to work on. I didn't know what a top roll was. You know, it was just one of those cup your wrists and drive sideways type of deals. And, I'm big into hunting, but I was down at my buddy's hunting camp, and he came to me the one time and he said, you know, he said, I got somebody that I'd like you to pull. He says, all your buddies are saying how good you are at arm wrestling. I said, all right, you know, bring them over. So the very next night he brings over Paul Talbot. He lives right next to where I was hunting. So I don't know who Paul is, you know. I'm thinking, you know, I'm going to wax this guy. So we sit down, kitchen table. You know, we didn't have an arm wrestling table or anything. We sit down at the kitchen table, and it was one of those things, you know, as soon as we gripped up, you know, I was like, something isn't right here. You know, I never felt anything like this. And, you know, Paul raked me over real nice and easy, kind of looked at me, kind of played with me. And, ever since that day, Paul Talbot has kind of taken me under his wing. He was actually just over here, a few days ago. We were training together, but, he's taken me under his wing and, you know, showed me the progressions and, you know, told me, you know, you got to shear up your hand a little bit. And, you know, throughout the early stages of my career, that was my main focus, you know, shearing up my hand. Cause I had general good arm strength from the gym and just my background, but I mean, my hand and wrist was weak. I don't work construction. You know, I work as a civil engineer by trade. So, you know, I got a lot of office work, a lot of paperwork, stuff like that. It's not a real, physical, job.
Yeah. Yeah. Paul Talbot. Wow. That's a pretty, rough introduction to the sport. Your first ever turnaround. But having said that, what a lovely guy. Very genuine, straight bloke, isn't he, Paul?
He is.
And another big frame guy. I used to always see Paul when he was pulling like the 65s and think, how the f are you making this class?
I was there for some of his weight cuts, Neil, you know, in Chicago for regionals in like 2015 to 17 time frame. And I was like, what are you doing, man? You know, I mean, it's just like, he looked like death.
Big lad for that, isn't he? He really is a big dude. When he used to be cut into 65s, I couldn't believe it. I was like, the hell? Must have helium bloody legs or something. It's remarkable. And he actually won the first WAL tournament in the lightweights, didn't he?
He did. Yeah, I think he won the first two. I think he won 2015 and I think Tony knocked him off in maybe 17.
Right.
I can't remember, but Tony, he had a 2-year defending, title. He had the hammer, and then, I think Tony knocked him off, and then he moved up to, middleweights the following year.
Yeah, it must have been, killing him. I mean, like you say, when you're seeing somebody lose weight like that, it's, you often wonder, you know, how much are they depleting themselves?
Exactly. Yeah, I looked at him. I was like, man, what are you doing? You got to move up. You know, your walk around weight is the middleweight. You know, you can cut 5 pounds and be at the 195, 200 pound class. What are you cutting 35 pounds for? You know, and he just looked horrible. The one time I seen him, I was like, you got to figure something different out here.
Have you ever done any cutting yourself, mate, or have you just always been the guy that can walk in? Because you obviously have got a very good metabolism for it. You don't look like you're carrying an ounce of fat.
Not really. I know one of Travis Bajent's. It was the Rockwell tournament in Syracuse, New York, that I pulled in. I think I cut maybe 10 to 12 pounds. It was an 87 or an 85 class, and I wanted to get down to that. There was a lot of guys that pulled that, so I kind of wanted to get in that weight class. You had Mike Dawson, you had Philippe, you had Joel Hudick and Seth Barnett, and all them guys were coming to pool that tournament. Yeah. And that was the finals out there in Syracuse. So I did cut that one time, but generally, 5-pound water cut, maybe to make weight, or I could just, like you said, walk in and I'd be good. Fast metabolism for sure.
So after Paul got you under his wing then did you straight away, did the defeat or the lesson that he taught you there, did that sort of make the bug bite a little bit? Were you very interested at that point?
Yeah, it lit the fire. And, he welcomed me with open arms to practices, that were fairly nearby for me, right about an hour time frame away. So I started to go to some practices with him and, went to a couple local tournaments. I remember winning a bunch of amateur tournaments. And then I remember, Bart Wood, a lot of the tournaments I would go to were in the Erie, general area.
Pennsylvania area.
So, I went to a couple, novice tournaments out there, and he got to the point, I was kind of running through the novice and amateur tournaments, but he's like, Kev, you gotta move up, we're gonna go to the pros. And, so I started to pull pro classes, got a little bit of an eye opener because my hand still wasn't where it needed to be and I was getting flopped open a lot. But, throughout the course of time, I started to get some stability in my hand and, started to fare well. I moved on to win a couple Ohio State championships in the pros, a couple PA State championships in the pro division, and just kind of progressed through there. I remember the one tournament Paul took me to. It was a good eye opener in terms of just being around some of the elite guys. It was in Sandusky, and I was pulling the pro class. I think it was just like a 0 to 200 and then a 200 plus type deal. Mike Dawson had put it on. I don't know if you're familiar with him or not.
Yes, yeah.
He used to be associated with the WAL. And they had a round robin there. Todd Hutchings was there, Scott Ballinger, Paul, Joel Hudick, Josh Bishop, a couple other guys. Mm-hmm. And I pulled that lower weight class, and I actually pulled against Sam Harris. It was like my second pro tournament ever, and I had no idea who Sam was. And Paul was like, you better protect your hand. This is going to be a good match for you to pull to see where your hand has gotten from a year ago. And I absolutely smashed Sam, and everyone in there was like, who's this kid? Even though, I was probably 10, 15 pounds heavier than him at the time, it was still a good win with me only being a year in. Sure. Sam with all of his experience.
Yeah, so. Real pedigree puller. Great arm wrestler, Sam Harris. Really is. So I was interested in, to pick up on something you said, just a moment ago. When you first went to the events and you were a novice puller, did you gravitate towards more inside techniques, or did you have any natural outside or natural top rolling ability? Because a guy as long as you are, I'm often interested in that.
You know what? I didn't even know what a top roll was, Neil. And then even when I kind of was getting, Paul was kind of bringing me to the practice and showing me, it didn't feel too natural. I was always one of them at the very beginning. I was kind of a supinate and kind of like a drag hook type deal.
Were you throwing the shoulder on top, mate, with your height, or were you just literally and hook it and trying to push it?
It was almost a back pressure style move, like almost like a high hook.
Okay.
Yep. But it really wasn't a dive in, fully commit type of side pressure. But that's kind of what I was acclimated to early stages. And over the course of time, I've actually become very, very comfortable top rolling. That's one of my go-tos. But again, it was me having to shear up my hand because it was just so weak. It was so vulnerable at times. I was always getting flopped open. So once I sheared that up and then learned the fundamentals of a top roll and the different avenues that I could take and different angles I could take with a top roll, I kind of gravitated towards, that was one of the tools that I had in my toolbox.
I remember, when you pulled in the pre-match at the WAL, was it CJ you pulled? Who did you pull?
No, it was Elsesser. Don't bring that up, Neil.
Right, yeah, but that first time, that was one of the first times I think I saw you in a super match, if not the first time in a super match environment. I'd only seen you prior to that in tournament. And you looked like, at that point in time, you were in two minds in the match. It looked like you were thinking to yourself, I'm going to top, no, I'm not. And I saw it, I could literally see your body shape changing moments before the goal. Like, literally, and I thought, he's not settled in his head. And I remember I was speaking to Jamie Beige, actually, from WL after. Mm-hmm. And I said, I felt bad for Kevin then, because I think he was a bit headlight effect. I think he couldn't make up his mind where he wanted to go. And I think you had the option there and didn't take it. And that was something I wanted to ask you today, because if you look at yourself now, where's your ace card, or have you not got one really?
Well, in terms of that match, your read is spot on. I remember the first match going in there, wanting to hook Brandon because I knew my inside power was superior to his. And, my idea was to grip low. And, he started to give me a pressure as soon as he closed his thumb. And I was like, I don't feel comfortable here at all. I feel like I'm going to get my hand completely peeled open. And, my mind was going. I didn't know whether to back off the table at that point or whether I should have just re-gripped or took a foul. And, I was 100% in my own head. And, Bart said go, and, it was straight over. And he raked me over pretty good on that first match. But, currently, I've gotten to the point where I can feel people out pretty well. I mean, going into a super match or a tournament, I feel that, I know most of the guys on that level to where I know what I have to do against them. So I know how I'm going to approach the table. I mean, things can change, but I mean, I feel pretty confident in both. I love going inside. I mean, I can drop down on my elbow pretty well and hang with, some pretty strong guys. But at the same time, I mean, if I have to post and go outside or get to the straps, I mean, I can do so.
I know Paul Lynn's spoken to me about your well-roundedness. He said to me a number of times, like, Kevin's got some strings to his bow. I was inquiring about you pretty hard for the WAL, because you were a guy that was very much on my radar, and Paul was one of the sort of go-tos to just sort of, what do you know about this guy? Can you break him down a bit? Because for me, the matchmaking element is very key. I always think you've got to try to make the match as tight as you possibly can. I'm not looking for anybody to come in there and get run over. It's actually the opposite.
Right.
I want to make it so I find opponents for people that I genuinely don't know the outcome. If and then if it's a tight as hell screaming career end. I mean, in Arm Wars, we used to get a lot of 3-3s, 4-2s. I'd be happy as hell if we saw that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was looking for the battle. That's what we're trying to achieve. So, it's very important that when I'm looking at someone for a match, I'm trying to break down who's the best opponent to put in front of this guy. That's not going to overwhelm them, but that's going to show the best of them, bring out their best. And when I spoke to Paul, he said, "Oh, you'd be surprised. Kevin's rounded as. You got a lot of options. You can put him here, and he's good. And if he tucks into his hook, he's solid." So you've obviously impressed a number of people out there.
Yeah,
what was your? Sorry, mate, go.
No, I fooled with Paul Lynn a couple of times. We've been fortunate enough to be at the same tournaments, after pulling or practicing, whatever it was. And, Paul's a brick. I mean, don't let him tell you anything different. I just got to recently have an experience with him about 4 or 5 weeks ago. I was at a Bajent's tournament in West Virginia, and me and Paul pulled, and his inside is just rock. I mean, I would really like to see him, against a Rob or a Craig or somebody with a lot of inside power, because I mean, I don't know if I can see anybody beating Paul right now. I mean, he's sheared up every aspect of his game. I remember about a year ago, I pulled him, and he was strong, but it seems like in that 1 year time frame, he's made leaps and bounds. I mean, he's ready. There's no doubt about it. Paul's ready.
Yeah, he's very, very diligent individual, isn't he? Pretty intelligent lad, and I'm sure he's breaking the sport down. He seems to have a very good understanding of it, and his hunger's second to none. I think he's really immersed himself in arm wrestling, and it seems like everybody I speak to can't tell me enough that Paul Lynn is the real deal.
He is, very much so. My money be on Paul probably against almost anyone.
Wow. Yeah, I think I would like to see Paul tested. Not too much, and I think that hopefully this year we'll get him into some kind of match action where we can see the very best of the White Oak. Let's get back to you, mate, for a moment. Obviously, I wanted to try and pick up on what was, because this is relaying back to what you were saying about Sam Harris. When was the first experience that you had in the sport where you were aware of your potential, where you thought, "Whoa, wait a minute. Maybe I got something here"? Because Sam, if that went over your head, that's a pretty good one.
Right.
But if you may have put it to one side because you're a bigger man, when was the first one where you thought, "Holy shit, I'm in the hunt"?
Well, I'd say that was kind of the beginning stages of it, because I didn't know, like I said, I didn't know who Sam was. So, going up, against Sam, everyone was saying, protect yourself, protect your hand, because he was a top roller. But I didn't know at that point in time until later, when I started doing research and delving into film, I had a pretty damn good win right there. And, but then I kind of progressed into a lot of the regionals, and I had some decent wins. I'd beaten Bill Sinks, Joel Hudick, Seth Barnett, guys of that caliber. And at that time, I was starting to delve into more film, going into those regionals, and I knew who I was up against and how I was going to kind of, approach each one of those matches. Yeah. So it was probably 2015, 2016 regionals where I was starting to, get a bunch of those notable wins. And, a lot of people come up to me, hey, who you just beat? A hell of a win. And, a lot of guys started somewhat jumping on my bandwagon. I'm still not the most notable guy, but, a lot of the guys that are a part of the sport kind of gave me a little bit of praise on some of those wins. So I kind of had an idea that, I'm approaching that level. And I think with just a few more years under my belt at that time, I could be right there as long as I put the effort in.
What would you say is your biggest accolade to date, mate? What's the thing you're most proud of? Whether that be a win against an individual, a tournament or event result, which featured a number of high-level pullers. What's your highest status win, do you think?
I'd say my highest win right now would be the win in the 2017 WAL finals in Vegas. It was the year that Wall kind of pulled the plug from everything. Yeah. And, Travis and everybody, got everything put together in Vegas at a bar. And I remember walking in, and that, like I said, that was the year Talbot and Bishop moved up. So they were all there. And my brother, he came with me to that. And he's like, man, look at Bishop. He looks like a brick shit house right now. Yeah. And I was like, yeah, he kind of does. And he's like, I'd love to see you pull him first match. What do you know? The very first match of the middleweight division, Kevin Robertson, Justin Bishop. I'm thinking, oh shit. Paul Talbot comes up to me. He goes, you better protect your hand. He said, he'll peel you open like a banana. I was like, oh yeah, great. Thanks for telling me that, 2 seconds before I go up to the table.
Good confidence builder. Cheers, pal.
So I go up there and, as soon as we kind of close your thumb, close your hand, I'm like, man, I feel really good right now. And, a bunch of jostling around, in the setup, and we finally get to go, and he takes me from about noon to 2, and I kind of get to pull him back over and kind of flatten his hand out. And then a few surges, I get him to the pad. I get a foul. So I knew I had to make a slight bit of an adjustment, gave him a tad bit of up pressure, and I kind of stalemated him in the center and was able to pin him. So that win right there, just the name and the venue and, being that it was in the finals, I'd say, everyone was kind of looking at me like, who the hell is this kid? I remember Craig Toulier even looking at me like, that was a hell of a win. I was coming off. He's like, that's a hell of a win, bud. And, that was kind of probably my best win to date was against Justin. But, I've beat some other guys. I've beat guys that are on WAL. I beat Hudick and Sinks, and, me and Paul go rounds at practice. So I know kind of where I stand amongst, the guys that are currently in the WAL.
Let me name a few names, put a few names out there. And, you tell me where you put them, whether they, are someone you'd like to pull, someone you have pulled. You can, embellish the story if you want to do, or anything about them, or someone that, you would put out of your realm a little bit right now. And I'm going to throw in a few different names. I'm going to start with Canadian BLM.
I'd absolutely love to pull, BLM. I was at a tournament with him one time. He was actually pulling the upper weight division. It was the High Spire PA state championships. I won my class. He was in the class above me, and there was an overall, and I was sitting around all day. It was one of them 400 or 500 entry tournaments, and I was sitting around all day, and it was taking forever with all the different entries, and I had to leave, and I didn't get a chance to pull them. I was wanting to pull them that day, and that was probably about 2 or 3 years ago. But I have all the respect for Brendan, but I think he's a little out of his element on times with how he portrays himself, maybe in terms of the how confident he is, and I think when Dallas pulled him, that probably gave him a little insight on where he stood. And I think me and Brandon would be a very good match. I think we're both kind of long arm pullers. I would absolutely love to pull him, whether that be in WAL or Arm Wars or a super match at a local event, whatever. But I think we match up very well. And I know Brandon Elcester has a win on him. So I kind of know where I stand with those guys. So, styles make matchups, but you kind of have an idea. And I think I'm right there with Brendan for sure.
What about AJ Henson?
I don't know a whole lot about AJ. I do remember seeing him in a few of the WAL qualifiers. I know he's a shorter but more stout lad. So I don't know a whole lot about him, Neil. So I really don't know where I'd stack up against him. I did see him pull. Who did he pull not too long ago that I was watching video? Actually, just the other day on. Can't recall the name.
It wasn't Rutgers, was it?
It might have been Brent Rutgers in Kansas City or something like that, or Wisconsin. I can't remember where it was, but he seems to be a shorter arm puller, real big hand, real thick hand. But I would entertain that match for sure. I mean, it's one of those guys that we've never pulled each other, so I would absolutely be wanting and willing to entertain something like that.
What about Dallas Langston?
Dallas Langston, I'd love a match with. I think he possesses a lot of inside power. I know he has some issues getting to the straps and dealing with, top rollers. So, I mean, I think it would probably end up in the straps unless I could really control his hand outside of the straps and get a pin or get a flash pin. The way he was setting up on BLM, I mean, I don't think he would get away with that at the elite level, but I think if he sheared that up and could get to the straps, I think it would be a barn burner, honestly. I don't know where he is in terms of, a Paul Lynn or whomever inside, but I kind of know where I stand with those guys. And, I think a lot of people underestimate my inside. I'm a tall, lanky, long arm puller, so they're thinking that I'm a topper all the time. But like I said, I have, no qualms about it. I can go inside. So, I would absolutely love a match with Dallas. I was actually thinking about trying to set something up with him. Hopefully maybe in the near future.
Mm-hmm. Jason Merlo.
Jason Merlo, I've never pulled, but I know a lot of people that have pulled him.
Yeah.
Actually, Paul Talbot just pulled him not too long ago. He was at that little tournament they had up in PA. I think Jason, from what I understand, his back pressure in his hand is insane. It's kind of one of them weirdo type strengths.
Yeah.
But I've never got a chance to feel it, so I don't know how I would really attack that match going into it. But I would love a match with Jason. I think me and him are really close to that same level, right there on the cusp of getting into one of the leagues, and I think that would be a great telltale sign as to kind of where we stand. I think that would be a barn burn. I really do.
What do you know about Robbie Russell?
Don't know a lot about him, but after seeing him do what he did to Craig, I definitely put him on the map, didn't it? I don't know where Craig is in terms of his arm. I know he had the surgery. But I mean, if Craig's anywhere near healthy, I mean, what a showing that was. I mean, he seems to be kind of like my physique, a little bit taller, a little bit longer armed.
He's taller than you, Robbie. Holy.
Is he really?
Is he? I was saying to you, I didn't know he was as tall as you.
No, I mean, he looks fairly tall. I mean, maybe he's not. Maybe that's just in the video. I guess he was standing up against Craig. Craig's a shorter guy, but he looks taller. Looks like a longer arm puller.
Robbie Russell, if you pick this up and you're in the comments, take away the mystique, mate. How tall are you? Because if you're taller than Kevin, that's a big part. That one.
So yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's another one. I mean, he was going to be in the cock of the walk. He was one of the guys in there.
Yeah.
So was Jason. So was Dallas. So that's kind of why I was looking forward to that, because there were so many top end guys that were right there that, I mean, I had a chance to possibly pull multiple or all of them, depending on, how the tournament bracketed out. But, I mean, Robbie Russell, yeah, I think he's the same way, right there with me and Merlo and Dallas. I would entertain a match with him as well. I mean, I think me and him kind of possess the same strengths in kind of the same areas, just from what I get from the way he pulls.
Joel Hudick.
Joel, I do have experience with. He's actually beat me in a tournament twice, but after those two losses, he beat me, and he actually was my first loss in the year of WAL finals that I beat Bishop. He had beat me the year prior in a local tournament, but then it was probably 8 months after the 2017 WAL championships. I had a 3-round super match at a Dave Chafee event in Erie, PA, and I did beat him 2-0 there. But Joel's one of those guys. He's a grinder, and if he can get on his A game, I mean, he's a solid solid puller. He's got a very strong hand. He can go inside. And that's where I beat him. I beat him inside. I wasn't messing with his hand. I dove right inside and I was able to hook him and pin him twice. But that was probably 2.5 years ago or so. So that was a little while ago. So I don't know where Joel's at now. I haven't got a chance to pull with him anytime recently. So, we're all making gains. Where I fall with him now, would be to be determined.
What about Michael Celiaris?
He would probably be at the top of the list, Neil. I had top of the list.
There's always that guy, isn't there?
I think it was the regionals at the Cubby Bear, 2000. It was the year of the Tremendous 12. I don't know if you remember that or not. Mm-hmm. The year of the Tremendous 12. I actually had a match with him, and that's kind of right when I started to kind of learn the straps. I was a horrible strap puller up until, the last year or two. And actually I completely dominated his hand outside of the straps. And then, Mike's got that big old hand, big old claw to him. And, once they tightened the strap down, he kind of got everything he wanted and he was able to pin me in the straps. But I feel even, 2-3 years ago, had I been able to pull better in the straps, I think I would have been much more in the match. Probably could have beat him that day. I think I would love that match. That's the match that, out of all the guys you mentioned, outside of maybe a Dallas or a BLM, that would be at the top of my list.
Now I'm going to go international on you a little bit now. What do you know about Glenn Benson?
I remember seeing Glenn at a few of the WAL formats, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, it was one of the 400 series super match showdowns when he went against Bishop.
Yeah.
I was actually just watching that one the other day. It came up on my YouTube, so I went back and I watched it. And don't know much about Glenn. A lot of the foreign guys, international guys, Nicholas and all those guys. I watched a bunch of film on them, but obviously I've never got a chance to pull them. But hey, I'm the type of guy, I'm not going to shy away from any match. You put somebody in front of me, I'll delve into the film, and I'll train for them specifically, and, I'll take it head on. And I'm will I win? Will I lose? It's to be determined, but, I'm willing to take it head on and, put all my cards in one basket for sure.
You can not argue with that, mate. I'm going to ask this another way as well. If you look at the crop of guys out there now, right, and you can pick yourself a match that's going to elevate your status and show what you are capable of, and you can call the name out that'll allow that to happen, facilitate that shop window for Kevin Robertson, who would the guy be?
I think for starters, I would probably have to go back to Mike.
That's
Mike's
the
got
guy
that
you really want. Yeah.
He's got that pedigree about him. Everybody knows Mike. He's had a hell of a run in his time in the sport. Very well known puller. He's right there, on the elite level with all the guys. He possesses a lot of tools, and I think a win against somebody like him would put me in that next tier. Wherever that would fall with whomever them pullers would be. But I think a win against somebody like him would be kind of that next step for me. I've got some wins on some guys right around there with the likes of Joel and Bill Sinks and, Talbot and all those guys, and Bishop. But I think Mike would be a pretty darn good starting point in terms of a notable win for everyone to say, hey, who the hell is this guy?
Now let's talk about your sort of training, mate, and preparation and so on. First of all, have you been very active in your training during the pandemic?
Super active, especially as of late. Until the last couple of months, we really haven't had the ability to have many tournaments. Since January, there's been a lot of tournaments in the U.S. going around, but from March pretty much till December of last year, that last 9 months, we didn't have anything. It was we didn't even have a gym open, let alone a tournament. So I was training in my basement a lot, so I wasn't getting a whole lot in, middle part of last year, but as of December, last 4 months or so, I've been hitting it really hard, practicing every week. I usually put in about 5 or 6 days a week with one off day. That usually being like a Sunday. But yeah, I've been killing it the last three months or better. Practice, every Friday here at my house. I get Talbot over and a couple other guys that we have come over. Been able to, venture out to certain tournaments and get some after pulls in with Hutchings and, Travis and Paul Lynn and those guys. So trying to disperse myself around as much as possible. And, I'm going to start getting into some more local tournaments, in the very near future coming up.
What's your sort of ideal breakdown in terms of prep for matches, mate? Do you tend to be the guy that will work the table and the feel for the table is most important? Or alternatively, are you a guy that likes to supplement with the weights and likes to go in there just as strong as you can?
The more and more that I've been invested in the sport, I've been wanting to get stronger. I actually kind of critiqued the way, because I kind of peaked out. Like I was at the gym and I started to get to the point where, like, what the hell am I doing? I just peaked out. I couldn't get any stronger. So I kind of changed that up. And as of the last 3 months, like I said, I've kind of gotten to the point where, I'm starting to see increases almost weekly or bi-weekly. But, in terms of the table, I always like to try to get on the table at least once a week. Especially in preparation of a match, kind of, put that to the side, maybe a month out to save from any injuries or anything of any sort like that. But, always been, big into, the different handles, working the different angles. I have a table at my gym, so I'm able to mimic it as much as possible in terms of my training at the gym. But, we've been hitting the table hard. So, I kind of weigh it equally if I had to say so myself. But it's been more strength based. I was always one of those guys that was there for more so reps and endurance because my endurance was always lacking. And I've kind of turned the tables and went more less reps, more weight to try to get over that hump and to start actually gaining strength again.
If you look at your sort of training when you are in the gym, what are the things that you find that you'd gravitate towards? Where are your big strengths, mate? Is it in your back? Is it in the bicep? Have you got an area that you would say is your acid strength or something that is your go-to?
My bicep it has always been strong and still is, and I work a lot of bicep, a lot of static holds, in the hook position. But I work a lot of, like I said, I could say it, 20 times, but my hand was always weak. So I'm always shearing up my hand, whether it's in a containment, like a top roll eliminator style handle, or whether it's a wrist wrench. I'm always working hand and wrist. I'd say primarily I focus on that a lot. Because I absolutely hate to get top rolled, but absolutely hate it, Neil. So, but yeah, I'd say the majority of my training is built around my hand and my wrist, but I do try to stay focused on inside game. I've delved into a little bit of side pressure. I do have an elbow issue, kind of like a chronic tendonitis type deal that I've been battling the last 2 years. So I don't do too much side pressure. But I do a lot of static holds, whether that be with, a cable machine or power bands or things of that nature.
What about speed, Kevin? Are you a guy that focuses a great deal on speed? You always seem like the type of guy who looks to control the match rather than explode through it.
Yes, very, very correct. I try, kind of like a Rob Vigent in terms of, I'm a containment type of puller. I don't fire on all cylinders like a Daniel Mosier. If I feel superior in strength, absolutely, I'll try to get rid of somebody real quick. But I'm more that, like I said, I always working on my hands. So I'm kind of like a containment style puller. I'll kind of let them hit. I may hit for a position, but I'm not going to hit to pin.
Fast over the inch rather than fast to the pad, yeah.
Absolutely. So, that's kind of the way that I approach most matches. I'm not one to just fire out of the box, but more so containment and a little bit of defense.
Who were your sort of arm wrestling inspirations, mate? Who were the guys, if you were to look at, we'll ask this two ways, the ones who you admire the most, and then secondly, the guys that you would say you try to emulate or would compare yourself to or try and learn from or copy?
I'd say the ones I try to learn from is pretty much Rob. He has a bigger hand, kind of like myself. I don't have a hand like Rob's. There's not many people that do. But in terms of the containment style pulling, I try to emulate kind of what Rob does because it's the same thing. I try to control center a table, and like I said, I'm hitting for that inch. I'm not hitting for that mile. But in terms of who I kind of look up to, Sam Harris has played a major role. I can remember sharing hotels with Sam and at different events and at different tournaments after pulling with Sam. And, Sam would sit down with me till wee hours of the morning, 3, 4 in the morning. And, he'd be showing me different ways to apply pressures to the strap, different, thumb placements and all the technical, things that Sam knows. In terms of a coach, I would suggest Sam to anybody. He's not just one of those guys that, kind of teaches by showing. He'll literally get up there and, hey, this is what you're supposed to do. Here's the pressure. Now give me that same pressure into my hand and let's see if you're doing it the right way. And, Sam has been a major player. Bart Wood, Dave Chafee. I've been, fortunate enough and have kind of an open invite to their practices at all times. I live about an hour and a half, 2 hours from those guys. So they've been very, helpful, in a lot of my training, a lot of my preps for my matches and such. So, those guys, and of course, Paul Talbot. He's always here, helping me out, helping me understand different things. So those 4 guys for sure.
Who were your sort of arm wrestling inspirations, coming up, mate? Who were the guys that you look to and sort of admire the most?
Well, coming up, I didn't know a lot of the guys, until I started to delve into the sport, I started to watch a lot of you can find Devin seminars all over the place, I remember there was like a 20-part series. So, I probably watched all 20 of those parts probably 20 times each. Yeah. So, I'd have to say if anybody, mostly Devin. Devin, another very technical arm wrestler. Obviously heavier guy, but very similar to Sam Harris, in terms of the technical aspect. So looked up to Devin a lot. Always loved Travis's, just sheer hype and motivation, just the way he handles himself. So, that was always an inspiration and somebody that I enjoyed watching, coming up through, my first handful of years in the sport.
Do you consider yourself still like a bit of a student of the game, mate? Do you immerse yourself in what's going on and study a lot of the, and if you do, are you more around the sort of chat show type things, or do you like to get onto the Voice of Arm Wrestling kind of technical, let's talk about pronation and supination stuff? Where do you find yourself towards, where are you gravitating towards in that front?
I do like the technical aspects of things, but I'm one of those guys that, even from when I was little, you're always a student of the game. There's always something to learn. There's always something to take from, an individual match or an individual tournament or your coach in the sport. So, I'm always a student of the game. My ears are always wide open. Always willing to take on, constructive criticism or whatever that may be. I'm not one of those guys to beat myself up over somebody telling me, hey, you're doing this wrong. All right, well, tell me what I'm doing wrong. Let me try to understand this better. So, yeah, I'm an open book when it comes to that. A lot of guys I've been fortunate enough to be around, showing me different things and different techniques and different ways to approach a table and so on and so forth.
And in terms of your sort of, approach to your career now, mate, do you have objectives in terms of times? Do you see yourself, okay, I want to progress to here, and have you spec'd it out like that?
I've kind of thought about it. I haven't necessarily written it down or anything like that, but, I kind of have an idea. I was hoping last year to maybe get a shot of some sort on some level. And then, obviously the pandemic hit and, put everything to rest for quite some time. But, moving forward in 2021, 2022, I'm hoping to get, a few big matches under my belt, showcase my talent, showcase what I'm made of, whether that be, wherever that may be, WAL, or wherever. But yeah, I do want to, I'm going to definitely get back in the circuit, get my feet wet again. Like I said, been training, but I want to get back out there and get into some tournament style arm wrestling, super match, whatever that may be. And then, I'm hoping to crack, that top 10 and, start chipping away at that list, for the guys that are ahead of me.
Where do you put yourself, mate, at the moment?
Oh, in terms of like top 20 or, I know.
If you look at the North American rankings right now, or you look at the men most likely in North America in or around your weight class, and you can be as biased or as reality check as you want, but where do you see you?
Well, I know on the North American rankings, I've made the top 20, but I'm like the last 5 or 6 guys, I think I'm like 16th or something. But I do feel that, with the guys that are ahead of me, them 15 guys ahead of me, I do feel, other than maybe the first few, being realistic, I don't know that I would fare too well against those guys, but I would never, discredit myself. I would never count myself out. But I'd say, from 6 on down to where I'm currently sitting, I can crack the top 10 easy. I think there's guys ahead of me that I feel that I can beat, that I feel I'm definitely in the match with, to the likes of some of the guys that you've already mentioned that we've talked about. I feel like I'm right there, Neil. I really do. I feel like my hand's where it needs to be. I feel like my inside game's where it needs to be. And, I don't think anybody is really going to come up there and just completely, just make me look like I'm not supposed to be there.
Yeah, you think you'd be a match for most of these guys, or they'd know they'd be in a pull?
100%.
Interesting. You ever pull with Storm?
I have not. I've never had I've pulled with a lot of his training partners. I've pulled with
That's
Paul
why
Lynn.
I was asking, really, mate. It's because of proximity to sort of Paul Lynn and Sam.
Right.
And I was just thinking, have these guys matched up? Because you have to say Storm's probably, in most people's top 5, top 6.
100%. Yeah. I agree with you. But like I said, I pulled with those guys, and just at the events and the practices that I've been to, Storm was not able to make it, or just not present at that tournament. So I've never gripped up a Storm. I've talked to him briefly at the a few different tournaments, but nothing more than a few short words. I know Storm, he knows me, but we've never ever gripped up.
And in terms of sort of the North American circuit right now, have you got anything on the horizon at all, Kevin? Have you got anything that you're whether it be an event that you're planning to hit, or a super match, anything like that?
No, I don't. I was actually, I was hoping. I know Paul Talbot had just put out there that he was going to a event to pull Justin Bishop. I don't know if you've seen on social media or not, but they're pulling a left-handed super match in Reno.
Yeah.
And I was hoping to possibly go out there and get another crack at Bishop. I was going to fly out with Paul and set up something with him, but supposedly, I don't know if you heard or not, but something going on with his thumb. He cut it bad at work. So I don't know. I'm not going to speak on Justin's behalf because I don't know the ins and outs and the details, but, so that kind of got pushed to the side. But, I have talked to, Paul Lynn about a potential few matches at some of his tournaments that he's got coming on the horizon here, in, Harrisburg. So, like I said, in the very near future, I'm going to be, either present at tournaments or in a super match format of some sort within the next probably month or two.
And to finish off the episode, because I'm conscious we're coming up to the hour mark, mate, just wanted to just pin in how you feel about that in terms of super match or tournament. What do you lean towards at this point in time? Because I've seen you do a massive amount of tournaments, only the one super match, although I know you've done others.
Yep.
What's your preference?
That's a tough one, Neil. I've always liked the tournament style because you're always going up against different people. You don't really have to have one game plan. But I like the mindset behind a super match to where you don't have to go into a training session like say it was a Celiaris. I got to beat his hand and wrist. I feel comfortable inside that I could beat him, but I got to be able to try to dominate his hand in order to be in the match. So you can go in and approach a match to where you know what you have to work on, and you can key directly in on those specific things. So I like that in terms of a super match because you have a lane in which you have to train for, and you can kind of focus in on that, and you can kind of delve into that, and you can kind of approach it at a professional level to where I got a 10-week training camp to prepare for one specific guy instead of a group of 30 guys. So
do you think your style is more suited to preparing for one rather than a tournament? Do you think your natural technical style has got a more advantageous format?
I would say so.
Speaking to like Mosier, for example, he's tournament mad because he's got that flash finish and he feels like he's best suited to it. How do you see that with yourself?
I really don't know if I could pick one or another. Like I said, I like the tournament format. But at the same time, I've had a handful of super matches, haven't had a ton of them. But in most of the super matches that I've had, I did well in, because I was able to train specifically for that person. So, if I had to gravitate one way or another, I would say super match format. But the tournaments were a blast. I loved the tournaments. I loved the regionals. I loved the big tournaments in Vegas. So, I'm not opposed to either one of them. I like both of them.
Kevin? Been an absolute pleasure, mate, getting you on, and great to let people learn a bit about you, mate.
Right.
To put you on people's radar. And this won't be the last show we do, obviously. I'd like to get yourself, Jason, who we had on the show the other day, and a couple of the other sort of up-and-coming new blood pullers on and bounce some stuff around. Obviously, we've got you earmarked, COVID permitting, for the Arnold UK. If that can go ahead and we can get everything away, it'd be great to see you in the battleground over there. So, Be nice to get some of you guys on here, talk to you about general stuff, things that are going on in the sport. If you'd be up for that, mate, that'd be great.
Absolutely. Hey, Neil, I appreciate the opportunity. It's great talking to you, and stay in touch.
And before you go, mate, are you on social media? Have you got any YouTube channel of your own or anything like that at all?
I don't. Not at the moment. I have kind of discussed some things with Paul in the past on possibly doing something. So, maybe in the near future you might see me. If I do, I'll be sure to let you know. But basically right now, just social media, Facebook page, Instagram page, things of that nature.
Tremendous. Ladies and gentlemen, if this is your first time to Supernatural Strength, please like, share, subscribe. Let everybody know about it. This has been part 1 of Kevin Robertson on the Deep Inside series. And until we see you next time here on Supernatural Strength channel, take it easy, peeps.
What grabs your eyes on that, if anything?